We all have these experiences where we're given glimpses of, this is who I am, this is what I want to be, and this is what I want to do. And we have a choice of whether or not we're going to listen to that. When we were growing up, my dad would always say to us, don't ever work for somebody else. Don't work for another person or another company that can tell you where to go, what to do, when, how much you're going to make. And, when you're growing up, you just think, like, okay, well, whatever. Okay, Dad. Looking back on it now, I can see how deep that, got into my heart, mind, and soul. When we moved here to Iowa, I was moving and going into second grade. And this is where, right around the time where I first heard the term ADD. Those years had an impact on me because the message was, Justin is a disruption. He can't sit still. Something's wrong with him. So I went into high school really craving a place to fit. We had a radio station in our high school. I don't know how I found out about the radio station, but I just kind of drifted into the radio station. And I found people who were like me. And they became some of my closest friends. When I left high school, I was convinced I was going to get my broadcasting degree and I was going to work in media for the rest of my life. When I graduated college, I interned at a production house. They were awesome guys, but I realized they're literally sleeping here. They sleep here. They don't go home. They don't see their families. I realized this isn't what I thought it was. This isn't what I just spent the last 5 years going to college for. I have no clue where to go from here. I went into what I would now classify as a depression. That sense of purpose and that sense of identity was gone. It had shifted and evaporated, and I didn't know how to find it again. And it wasn't just like, oh, hey, I'm bummed out for a couple days or a couple weeks, but it was years. I was waiting tables, I was taking odd jobs, painting houses, and it was just a really difficult time. At the gentle suggestion of my folks, they said, hey, you don't have to go to our church, but we think you should go to church somewhere. So I was like, whatever. I'm miserable, so I'll try anything. But it was again during this time where I was starting to kind of get my footing at the church where I met my wife, and she was fantastic. And so I started to volunteer there, and then I interned there, and then they're like, hey, do you want to just work here? And I said, well, no one else is really paying me right now, so why not? So at the church, I began to see these little opportunities spring up. So I started playing around with our church website, and then eventually got our church onto Facebook and started building an email list for our church. I started to get emails from people, emails from other churches, from other pastors, who would say things like, hey, how did you do that? And then I started getting questions from small business owners. They weren't asking for their church, they were asking for their business. And that's where I began to see the opportunity. It was right about this time that we had found out we were going to have a baby, our first baby. So Carrie had this dream, and that was to stay at home with her children. We were so excited, but I also knew that if Carrie was going to stay at home, I had to make more money. There was just something inside me that said, not only do I want to accomplish that for her, and this is the first time that I began to hear my own voice say, there are things that I want to do, that I want to accomplish, that would have never been possible, at the salary and at the amount of time I was working at the church. So again, I saw the opportunity. I started building my email list. I went to a webinar one time and they said, before you do anything else in business, start building your email list. So that's what I did, and started consulting with organizations and started doing this on the side. And very quickly, I began to see, wow, Just by doing a few of these gigs, I'm making almost what I make at the church. This one day I had this conversation and I went into my boss at the time, I went into his office. In the most gracious way that he could muster, he said, "Hey, listen, the side gigs, the consulting on the side, you have to stop doing that." And there was a line that he said towards the end that I will remember for the rest of my life. And he said to me, he looked me dead in the eye and he said, "I own you for 40 hours a week." And it was in that moment where I knew I had a choice to make, and I had made the choice before I had even left his office. And that choice was, not only am I done working here, I will never be in a position again where someone will have the ability and power to say that to me. I knew at that point, like, I was unemployable. I could never go work for anybody else ever in my entire life. And so it was like, well, I'm not gonna go get a job. I'm not gonna go get a job. So what what other option do I have? And what I knew I wanted to do was basically take everything I knew about digital marketing. So I took my knowledge base and distilled it down into this course. I remember thinking to myself, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I hired a guy named Casey Graham, flew down to Atlanta, spent 2 days with him, and he taught me everything. So he was the one who made my first Keap marketing automation campaign. And the goal that I set for myself was I wanted 100 paying clients within the first 90 days of launch. So we launched in September. I'll never forget, client 100 came on board December 31st. And I started to cry. Because it's in that moment where you know everything's gonna be fine. And so I had 100 paying clients paying $97 a month. And if you do the math, it's about 10K a month in recurring revenue. So you can imagine that plus some of the consulting gigs I was doing, what a mindset shift that was for me. It wasn't until like the later part of 2018 that I really started to truly enjoy myself in business. Once the recurring revenue started stacking up, it got more and more of my attention, and I started paying attention to the dollars and cents rather than maybe my internal compass of what I wanted to be doing. And so I pushed really hard into the direction of, building up this agency, and I had a plan. And that path, actually, we were on the way to success until everything broke. And it broke in fantastic fashion. We lost clients. I remember there was a week where I let go 11 clients because I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't sustain the pace. And I think ultimately what I learned from that was I had lost sight of that initial spark. And so for the next year, I basically just treaded water. And I started asking that question again. What do I want to be? Who do I want to help? And so then the question became, well, what am I actually passionate about now? I was able to start a new business where what we get to do all day, every day, is help individuals and businesses see what their different is. So how they're unique. And in many ways, I feel like this is the path that I've taken, is to say, Justin, what makes you different? What makes you unique? It is being able to come up with ideas and names and offers and slogans and headlines and taglines and copy. And I'm not talking even from a dollars and cents perspective. I'm talking about being free in your business and being free in your own heart and mind to build and run the business that you want to have. My life now, if you'd have asked me 10 years ago, would I be doing what I'm doing? There's no planet or set of circumstances where I would have guessed what I'm doing right now. But I think that's most of us. I think that's 99.5% of most entrepreneurs, is most of us are just regular people who our heart beats a little bit different, we think a little bit different. So we have to make our own path. We have to provide our own way. And so for me, entrepreneurship is just such a perfect container in which to express my creativity. Like starting, running, selling businesses has been one of the most rewarding aspects of my life. And I can't see myself doing anything but that for the rest of my life.